Gavin.
Hey, Louie.
Diva, we are at Sunday service today. We are letting all the girls in early for us, and I'm so excited. And I fucking love that sassy little mug you have. It makes me. Why does she come with the cup on the bottom?
This is my communion. So it's stable. It's like me. It's very stable. It's very
Diva. The calls are coming from inside the house. Okay,
from inside my head.
Also, I love that because audience, we are recording on a Sunday morning. Instead of Gavin having his 3 different cocktails, he has coffee.
It's coffee.
So there is not a problem.
I need a drug to get through this. If it's caffeine, then that's what it must be.
Hi everyone, welcome to the Mixed Reviews.
We are a film podcast where we take a film subject such as an actor, director, or mini genre. We take an entire month. We learn as much as we can. We watch as many movies as possible. And then we tell you what we like and what we don't like. And we give you all that information within a reasonable amount of time.
We mix up those reviews. They are hot and cold, just like Katy Perry. Who
yes and no in this economy.
Yeah, yes and Ariana Grande. God, we are so gay. But anyway, we are not alone. There's a reason why we are recording at this fine hour.
We are wandering the halls of Bly Manor trying to contact the spirits, and we got one.
Yeah, and ring-a-ding-ding, we got one. Please welcome to the stage. It is the lovely Eoin Daly. Hi, girly.
Hi. Thank you for allowing me to come to Blythe Manor. Who has taken over us? I do not know.
Owen, it's especially wonderful to have you here. I was just in Ireland, but months ago, feeling my banshees of Inisherin oats, looking over cliffs, pondering life. There goes that dream. But so thank you so much for being here.
I have to get up and leave. I'm sorry.
Thank you for being here. You selected a wonderful subject for us. Someone who we've certainly seen some of her movies through this project we call the Mixed Reviews. So I'm very, very excited. Some old business before we get started into today's episode. Our last episode, we talked about James Marsden, America's Boy Scout.
Yes. Though, I mean, and I know not to get too deep into it, but we picked a bad time to do that episode.
Very bad timing.
I was like,
I don't know if we cursed him. I mean, well, whatever, first of all. And second of all, I always say famous people are not real people.
Right.
They're going to be fine. They have money, and we're not going to speculate.
Nope.
But all that being said, we talked about James Marsden in our last episode. We asked you guys to go online and vote for your favorite James Marsden movie, and here are the results. Sonic the Hedgehog came in at last place at 10%. 27 Dresses came in at 11%. Hairspray, which was Gavin's pick, came in at second place at 30%. And I can't even... The last time I've won one of these, can't even remember. Enchanted, first place with 49%. Those 2 movies, though, are his bangers.
Yeah. Though I do feel really bad for William Shakespeare's Sonic the Hedgehog. I cannot believe that adaptation did not get more votes.
I know. It's tough out there, ever since the strike. It's just a lot's going on.
Yeah, exactly. No one's in for classics. That's the...
Owen, are you familiar with James Marsden's work? Are you a fan?
Yes, I am familiar with the work of Mr. Marsden, and I have seen the Sonic the Hedgehog films, both.
Yes, yes.
Quick tangent. I do have quite a traumatic story when I saw the second Sonic the Hedgehog film. I saw it during the day in a cinema with a lot of children, and had a pair of shoes, a pair of shoes thrown close enough in my direction for discomfort.
Do they think that you were like a political figure that had done the Iraq War? Is that what's...
I do not know. I mean, I made a choice by seeing it during the daytime, but it's how I did it. So it definitely has stood out in my mind.
Were they children's shoes?
Yes, they were their own shoes. I think they were siblings. I don't know. This is the story that I created.
Yeah, right. There's like a very rich text in your mind all of a sudden. Like, why are they throwing shoes? Yeah, I have a similar story when I went to go see The Little Mermaid. And I was like, this is fucking hell. I was like, and what was wild is like, I was looking at the parents who were like, clearly like, they don't give a fuck. And I was like, you know what? They kind of do deserve this. Like, they must be like, this is my everyday fucking life. I just want the kids to run around and be assholes with other people. And I was like, I hate you, but I feel you. I understand. People with kids out there, like, I don't know how you do it. Someone has to, I guess.
We can't just put them all in an orphanage.
Yeah, no. I mean,
that's awful of me. I'm sorry.
The logistics alone, Gavin. But okay, James Marsden, girly, you were going through Hollywood without nary a scandal, and yet we did one episode on you, and here she comes.
Yeah, she had to open your fucking mouth 20 years ago.
We hope you get through it, babes. If not, then I guess you deserved it. I don't know. This is a very fucked up situation.
It's a super fucked up situation. Well, just so I make myself clear, we're not supporting him writing a letter in defense of a terrible human being doing terrible things.
No. But he was young and also probably didn't know all the facts.
Right. Exactly.
But anyway, we are here with our lovely guest, Owen, to talk about not America's Boy Scout.
Yeah, poor Owen being dragged into this. Owen has nothing to do with this, everyone.
I don't even know what you're talking about, I chose...
Ignorance is bliss, baby.
Yeah, we'll tell you off pod after, babes. Yeah. It's a whole thing. And anyway, Owen, why don't you tell all our lovely listeners who we are here to talk about today?
Yes, well, the subject that I have chosen is a performer who's no longer with us. So the hope is that they won't get into any soon-to-be scandal post this recording, but you never know.
You never know.
So the person that I want to discuss is Deborah Kerr, the great Oscar loser that she is, unfortunately.
The Susan Lucci of the Oscars, baby, basically.
Oh, worse than Susan Lucci. Susan Lucci won.
Yeah, that's true. Never. That's true.
Okay,
13 times the charm.
Can we talk about how, like, is Deborah Kerr's curse, like, did she pass it on to Glenn when she gave her honorary Oscar?
Yes, first of all. I believe that's a fact. I think that's on her Wikipedia.
And when Glenn eventually gets her honorary Oscar, like, whatever girly gives it to her is the curse passed on to the next generation, you know, like...
There was a brief moment you saw when she handed the Oscar to Deborah Kerr that her eyes turned black.
Yeah, and it got her, gal. It got her.
Yeah, no, I guess I didn't want to start with this, but it was funny because the whole time that we were doing this, I kept trying to think, like, does Deborah Kerr have a modern equivalent or a like person that has a similar, and I can't think of anybody else other than Glenn Close. And maybe I've been influenced by this honorary Oscar presentation, but like, and we did a Glenn Close episode, but that regality that Glenn Close has, that even when she's playing sort of the down dirtiest of characters, it like exists. It's like an aura around her. And so like, what a good, like, weird comparison.
I know. Owen, why did you want to do Deborah? Like, what's your relationship to her?
Well, I mean, I find her career quite fascinating in how it's perceived versus how it actually is. For example, like I feel like the perception from a lot of people who just hear her name is that she plays a lot of stuck-up characters. I mean, Carr herself would call them, I think, stick up the arse characters.
Yeah.
And then, so that's the perception which a lot of people have. But I think if you go into watching a lot of her films, especially the ones she made in her early career in Britain, it's not that at all. I think that's the reason I want to discuss her, is to try to get people who maybe have this preconceived conception of her to like understand that she's so much more than that.
Totally, 100%. Like, we'll get into it, but like, it feels like once Hollywood got their hands on her, they like made her into this like little, you know, British doll character who is very prim and proper and the lady, like her identity to American audiences. And eventually, you know, writ large was like, oh, this is the proper lady. And yeah, through the research, I was like, she actually was kind of really funny and like wanted to be like a sex bomb and wanted to be like crazy and dumb. Like that's so cool.
Yeah. I think when you kind of were trying to think of a comparison to someone in the modern age, I like she's not similar in any way, but I think the closest would have to be Emma Thompson, just based on especially her work in the 90s where she played a lot of period leading women. And then when you see her outside of film, she's so much more goofier.
Yes.
And maybe it's because in the modern day actors are allowed to do so, whereas when Deborah was primarily working, there was that sense that you had to like keep a lot inside, and there isn't as much media of their personality.
Yeah,
if that makes sense.
Yeah, I love doing these old Hollywood glamour episodes and subjects. I think they're so fun, and hopefully, some folks will get some inspiration to go and find some of these old movies.
I am really happy that you brought her to us, because I don't know, and I don't mean this as in like an insulting way, I don't know if we ever would have gotten to Deborah Kerr in this project, but she's A, so incredibly worthy, and B, I don't think I realized how much I loved her until doing this, and I'd seen a lot of her movies. I mean, The Innocents is one of my favorite movies ever, but I think I was sort of brainwashed by the Hollywood thing. And I'd seen her films prior to being in the United States, like some of her British films. But I think my brain thought of her as she said after she did The Prisoner of Zenda, and she begged Mayer to let her stop being the pretty lady in a beautiful gown. That is a direct quote from her. So like that, I think that's where my brain always sort of went with her. I was talking to a friend that we're doing this episode, and he's like, "Oh, I've never liked her. She's like she's like too theatrical for me." And I was like, "Oh, I get it, because she comes from an era prior to, like really the 70s is the late 60s, 70s is when, a lot more realism comes into it, but I've never had a problem with presentational acting in an older film. I love it when when it's done well, and I think she does it incredibly well.
Yeah, and also she was like there at the pinnacle of like Technicolor. There are some of these films where it is just a kaleidoscope of color and beauty. She is glamour. Like it's, and she sounds like a very cool, The Range. My God, The Range. She was, doing everything. It's so fun. So yeah, with that being said, why don't we get started and head on over to our rewind. Deborah Jane Trimmer was born on September 30th, 1921 in Glasgow. It's funny, there's a fun little biography channel like bio about her, which I think is actually very well done. She was her father was a World War I veteran, and he like lost a leg, and so he came back from the war, and he became like an engineer. Her mother is Kathleen Rose, and they, her first years she was in Scotland, and it's really funny. Her brother says that she was like always kind of like this little actress, and would always like dress him up, put him literally in drag.
She was always dressing me up in all sorts of things, dressing me up as a woman. I think she got the satisfaction of holding people's attention.
What is he up to? What happened to his queer ass?
He's now a spokesperson for Anastasia Beverly Hills. That's
incredible. Incredible.
He is Norvina.
Imagine. But so like for the early years of her life, very lovely, childhood, but then drama. The family business is going under, and so they have to move in with her grandmother, who like basically is a hard ass bitch. Like, very strict, very Victorian. They like say something in that biography about like how she would make Deborah like lay on the ground for like hours on end to like straighten her back out, and just very strict. And then also at this time, they send her off to boarding school, like very far away. Her personality is becoming a lot more insular and kind of shy, and so she's bullied a lot. And then her father dies when she's 16, I believe. Yeah, he dies of tuberculosis, and it's things are not going well.
No, that sounds bad. That sounds not good
for young Debbie. But there is like a shining light at the end of all this. Later that year, her aunt, who was a radio actress, she had a drama school and offered her, a spot to come to her drama school. And, it changed her life. She was able to, be expressive and emotional. And it was like a really good outlet for her and all these emotions that she was having in this like really tough period of her life.
Didn't she also train in ballet too?
Right, yeah. And so
she
that
was
also
taught her movement and pose and poise and all the other P words.
And pussy.
Something she was well versed in giving.
Yes.
I was going to mention about her brother that he was a journalist.
Oh,
well, there you go.
And who sadly died in a road rage incident in 2004. So
but
a journalist,
he went before her. Sucks.
Yeah.
That's the other thing too, by the way. Like, I know we're talking like her dad lost his leg in World War I. Like, she lived till 2007. She had an AIM account, guys.
Yes.
Like, that's this is a woman who had a very long life, and so I don't know. I don't want people to think like too much like, oh my God, like, oh, black and white. I don't know what's going on.
No, like
she was alive.
Yeah, this is, not that long ago, guys.
Mm-hmm.
So, she's 16. She's, training in ballet. She is in this acting school. At 18 years old, she says, baby, I'm out of here, and hooves it to London to be a star. She was kind of working it, she stayed at some fucking YMCA type scenario. In 1939, she won a place in a theater group, and she met an agent, this agent was the person that said, Deborah Kerr is known for being this like immense glamorous beauty, but like the red hair is really kind of a big part of it. This agent was the one who said like, you should lighten your hair, like that'll make you stand out, and also said, we got to get you a new name, babes. And so
Trimmer, Trimmer's not selling it.
Trimmer is not the most glamorous of last names, so so she takes a family name, Kerr. Must be said, because this is an audio medium, it is spelled Kerr,
right?
Pronounced like car, like the star.
Well, I was gonna say when she came over to America, when they brought her over, like Louis B. Mayer did this whole print ad campaigns that was like, Deborah Kerr rhymes with star. So like,
which is wild, because like it's literally another word. Car is a word, an automobile. But he said, no, baby, we got to punch it up.
Hey, listen, no one is in for automobiles in movies, okay? She wasn't starring in Transformers.
That's true.
Hollywood legend has it that on first meeting this charming actress, Louis B. Mayer declared, Deborah Kerr. It rhymes with star.
So she changes it to Kerr. It's a family name. And in 1940, when she was 19, one of the top producers in London, Gabriel Pascal, approaches her and is like, and literally she tells a story how he goes up to her and is like, oh, you're a sweet virgin, aren't you?
When Pascal came over to the table and said, sweet virgin, I thought, well, he said, are you an actress? And I said, yes. And he said, then take down your hair. You look like a tart. That was my start off.
He gives her first major role in Major Barbara. She's 19 years old, and it's like the supporting character. And
in her defense, she was going for tart. That was the attention she wanted.
As we all are. I didn't get to watch Major Barbara.
While she does have a small role, it is quite nice to see where she began. And like, while the focus is obviously Wendy Hiller, another great British actress at the time, she's very sweet in it. And then I mean, she would immediately like go into much bigger things, but it is nice to see that even from the very beginning that she was in what I'd consider a major film.
Yeah, I mean, like it was also Rex Harrison was in this movie. Like it
Right.
was a big movie, and yeah, it's bizarre that she kind of was like going through this really tumultuous teenage era, early teenage era, and then like it's just immediately kind of thrust into this world of acting and is killing it. Puts herself out there. I mean, similar to like James Marsden, like arrived to Hollywood, boom, got an agent, boom, going out, like and getting the roles, I mean, she obviously becomes like a way huger star than he ever would be, but like
I do think that's the only time that comparison's ever been made. So I'm calling up Guinness right now.
Hi, Luita said something crazy on the pod. But yeah, she immediately becomes like, this off the strength of her performance in Major Barbara. She gets the leading role in her next film, Love on the Dole. And it's, and this first phase of her career, this like first British phase of her career is, it's interesting because there's a lot of range here. Like, because for whatever reason, there's not like the Hollywood trap of like, what's your lane, girly? Stay in it. She's able to do a lot of different things here, and really put to use her training from theater school. And it's really fucking cool to like see this. And when we get to her MGM days, it's like, oh, the shift is very kind of crazy. I'm just gonna like mention these things. If anyone has anything to say about them, holler. But so Love on the Dole, Penn in Pennsylvania, like those are both in 1941. Hatter's Castle, The Day Will Dawn. The biggest one of these is The Life and Death of Colonel Blimp. That's in 1943. I saw that and I was like, this is fucking weird. I don't know what's happening in this movie. She plays 3 characters, which is a gag.
Right.
It's like very silly Billy. It feels so British. I'm like, well, yeah, laughing at some crazy shit here.
It is. I mean, it's the most British movie I think perhaps ever made. But the turn of that is it's also very like, it's not the most flattering portrayal of what Britain is and what Britain thinks of itself and whatnot too. And I think that's what's really fantastic about it. I think she's really great in it. I mean, the key to her playing these 3 different roles is, I think as an audience member, you're supposed to realize that like, she's not like she's 3 different women throughout Colonel Blimp's life, or Colonel Candy as he actually is in the movie. Colonel Blimp was a famous comic strip character at the time, and they took the name, but they didn't take any of the plot of it. And what she is to represent is she is his ideal woman. So she's playing 3 different. She actually plays a 4th one very briefly. She's Whitney Houston. I'm every woman. So like doesn't, there's that great scene where his German friend comes and he's like, this was my wife. Doesn't she look exactly like your wife, who I secretly loved forever? And he's like, she's very pretty. She's great. Yeah. She's beautiful, stunning. Like, and you get the idea like, oh, he sees her in a completely different way than how everybody else is. Yeah. And, I love that opportunity that she has in it, because she does a really good job at separating them. Because when you first meet her, she's this really outspoken, like, why should women marry? And then the wife, like, is very loving and very, like, there's that incredibly sweet scene where they're listing why they love each other. And, like, I teared up a little. I was like, oh my God, Deborah.
I'm marrying you because I want to join the army and see the world. I'm marrying you because I love watching you play polo. I'm marrying you for 50 different reasons, and they all mean that's how I imagine my future husband.
Same here. That's how I imagine my future wife.
And then the third one, she's like her name's something like Johnny Radio or something. Like she's like a war driver, and it's so, yeah. I really love Life and Death of Colonel Blimp. I'd been meaning to watch it for a very long time. I literally didn't get to watch it until last night, but I fell deeply in love with it. I do want to mention too, a lot of these, because of what's happening in Europe at the time, and obviously like World War II is occurring for them. As Americans, we're not involved in World War II yet. A lot of these films are about war, about the army, or like not even so blatant attempts to try and get America to enter the war. Pen of Pennsylvania is one of those films that's like, look how much national pride you have. Like, you should want to help. Right. Penn was a British person who helped found your nation. You know, the Day Will Come, which is about a Norwegian village that's fighting back against Nazi oppression. You know, that one's not even subtle about it. Yeah. And so like, that's a lot of the things that she's getting to do over there. But because of that, she's playing roles that probably wouldn't have been offered to her without the context of what's happening in the real world at the time.
But the Germans do not want anyone to know what the king say. But my father, he wrote out hundreds and thousands of times the king's speech on little pieces of paper and gave them himself to the people. And one day, Gunther came and caught him writing, took him away.
My darling, all over Europe, good, kind people are being taken away.
I See a Dark Stranger, which was released in the U.S. as The Adventuress, which, The Adventuress for season 17 of Drag Race. I mean, when?
I managed to rewatch I See a Dark Stranger this past week, and I really enjoy that film because she gets to play an Irish person who isn't accepted in Ireland as she's merely more than she's just a woman. Basically, they won't allow her to do anything in a war effort. So then she becomes a Nazi spy, in not the greatest of ways. And I think she's really good in it. And she's very, what you mentioned about Imperfect Strangers, I think she also has in I See a Dark Stranger, where she is just playing these. There is always sex is present, whether it's physical or emotional or whatnot. It's always present, and it's definitely present in this film as well. And I think when you see performances like this and the ones that you've been listing, it's always shocking to me what she would go into in like the decade to follow, is because she's such a she's having something so special. Like, she's just so alive and so kind of fun. Yeah. And even in dramatic things like Conor Blimp, she finds the fun in it, which is always really enjoyable and really just makes me always gravitate towards her.
In I See a Dark Stranger, Gavin, I think you would especially like this movie because it is like this comedic spy thriller. And she's like very internal. She's such an internal actress. There's a lot of like monologue where she's like, oh, fuck, what am I supposed to do now? Like, she's like an amateur spy because she grew up hearing all these like tales that her father and grandfather were talking about being in the war. And she literally has to like smuggle a dead body out of a house to dump him out onto, and like everyone is stopping her and she's like, please leave me alone. And she's like having these crazy thoughts. It's funny, it's sexy. She's like, ugh, I have to like her contact in for the spy thing. He's like, yeah, this go fuck this soldier, and she's like, what? Oh, I don't want to. And it's titillating, and it's like you said, Owen, it's fun. Like it's very fun. I would say the end of this era is Black Narcissus, which I think a lot of people would say is also one of her greatest films. Again, just like fucking sex.
That's a movie about yearning. Like, just
honey, there's something going on under the habit, is what I tell you.
Isn't there like I love Black Narcissus, so I was like, I'm confident that I know enough about Black Narcissus. I do not need to watch it again for this because there are so many things to watch, and I do love that movie. I mean, there's like a moment where she's like not touching him, but also like just like being in his presence, and I just think about that like,
oh, that is like all of the nuns in the film. I think my favorite image from the film is when Mr. Dean,
Yes.
when he comes to the after something has happened, he comes to the church with no shirt on, and there's a shot of him with Sister Ruth just inching her way into the screen, staring directly at his body. Like, it's so funny, and like I don't feel like enough people talk about it. Like, I don't know if you do find this little like 1 second clip of her, just she literally is just, it looks, she's just like, oh,
she's like, hello. Oh, it's funny. I mean, it's like the let me just say this: the movie is about these nuns who are like stationed in the Himalayas, and you know, they get there, and there's like, for a lot of these fucking movies, there's always like one fucking white guy who's like, yeah, I've been here forever and it's crazy. Are you ready to, can you fucking do it? And so there's one guy, and like, he's always half naked, and he's like, yeah, fuck God, whatever, I'm a bad boy. And they're all like, what? No.
Oh no. My worldview.
And she's like in charge of them or whatever. I don't understand how nuns work. There's like the head bitch, and she's that one.
I don't understand how nuns work.
and they just like, it's all, you know, there's drama in the mountains. Talk about fucking beautiful film. Like, this is Technicolor dream.
It's so funny because, and not to get too far into this, they remade Black Narcissus as like a TV miniseries a couple years ago, and just seeing the beautiful matte painting work from this original movie about how they do the mountain cliff and how they do the nunnery like on top of it, and then seeing the terrible CGI, like, and I didn't watch the miniseries, but I saw the images of it, and it was just like, as a species, what are we doing?
Yeah.
We used to be artists.
And it's so dramatic. There's the tension, there's all the sexual tension, but like, one of the nuns is really like, loses her fucking mind and is like, I'm gonna fuck or you're gonna die. And
I think you have let yourself fall into thinking too much of Mr. Dean. Sister, don't you realize what you're doing? What you're running the risk of losing in yourself? Sister, I must make you see before it is too late.
All the same, I've noticed you're very pleased to see him yourself.
they're literally like fighting like fucking Avengers on a mountain, and like there's all this symbolism going on. Yeah, and it's just people forget or we don't talk enough about how horny people were back in the day in these movies. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think like Black Narcissus is always the first film I think when I think about Deborah Kerr, and I agree. I think the like Jack Cardiff, who's the DP on the film, it's like easily among like my top 10, 5, whatever, probably number one ever photograph films. And the fact that it was all produced inside on a set, like there weren't that many location shots. It's just, but it feels so expansive. It feels so much grander than all these films that are filmed on location, where they maybe have the location for like 2 seconds, so they have to quickly shoot something that's not well shot. Whereas this, they just got to shoot it so well. They use, as you said, the matte painting so well to like create the fear of like the heights, the just how when as the film gets to its end and Sister Ruth loses it. I mean, loses it in the greatest way. I mean, that shot of her just painting her lips, her running through the jungle in her Ugg boots, her running around the church, opening a door, coming out a sweaty mess with like everything just like gone. She's thrown herself into it, and then you have opposite that you Deborah Kerr, who still has maintained her her beliefs, her the mission is first, and
yes.
I agree. I think their fight is just, I mean, it's not really a fight, it's a quite like, it's just a struggle of Sister Ruth has lost her mind and she sees Sister Clodagh as like, you are keeping Mr. Dean away from me. Yeah. I'm going to kill you because he won't have me. Right. It's just so epic. I love it so much. I watch the film, I'd say like yearly. I've never seen it on the big screen. It is one thing I need to do before I leave this world in who knows how long, is see it like on a big screen and just like live in the gloriousness of all the visuals.
And not to drag this out much further, because I know we haven't even reached our MGM days yet, but I do want to just put a note in here about Powell and Pressburger, because this is also Michael Powell, Emmerich Pressburger film, much like Colonel Blimp. And what they did so well was marry the film aesthetic to theater, I think. And there's other directors who sort of do that nowadays. I think people sort of maybe lump Wes Anderson. I don't in with that category. I think the closest we've gotten, weirdly enough, is maybe the all the names have left my brain because we're on a podcast currently. The Keira Knightley,
Joe Wright.
Yeah, Joe Wright. Yes,
Yeah,
I think Joe Wright has come.
Yes.
Yes, yeah. He's certainly come the closest with his marrying the thing, but he like went to the further aspect of being like, it's actually set in a theater, and it's like, okay. But I truly love their movies. I agree with you, Owen. It's one of those things where like I would love to see some of these on the big screen. I've only seen one, and I've seen their adaptation of Tales of Hoffman on the big screen, which also, by the way, like if you ever get a chance to do that, do it. It's sumptuous. Truly some of my favorite filmmakers, and obviously their stuff echoes to nowadays. I mean, Martin Scorsese's longtime editor, Thelma Schoonmaker, is Michael Powell's widow. And so they've spent a lot of time restoring these films, getting them out there through Criterion. So like you have no excuse not to see at least one of their movies at some point in your life. And they're truly worth it. Also, when they were doing Colonel Blimp, Michael Powell had a very brief affair with Deborah Kerr. And in his autobiography, he wrote that she was the love of his life. Sorry, Thelma.
God.
Yeah. So like, whatever, he's dead. But yeah, we could move into the MGM era, but we never get a chance to talk about Powell and Pressburger, and they're truly, I don't think we have film the way we have it now without them. And I think almost all of the like who we think of the major filmmakers have done something in an attempt to make nods to them. Are they always successful? No, but they certainly, their echo is felt into the modern age.
Not afraid to reference or not reference.
Exactly.
Yeah, I agree. I think their run of films in the 40s is especially incredible, like from 49 Parallel all the way to The Red Shoes, which would be the year later. It's just, whether it's in black and white or color, like to me, they invented Technicolor.
Yes.
Like Technicolor is because of Powell and Pressburger.
It's so wild to me that I don't know if you had this over in Ireland, and also none of us are old enough to have experienced this. When Colonel Blimp was released in America, because Churchill, first of all, tried to get it like not released because he thought it was a parody of him, and but he was able to. I know exactly, but he was able to keep it from coming to an American market. When it did finally reach America, Owen, it was in black and white, and it was 90 minutes.
Huh?
Yeah.
They cut her, girl. They got her.
Yep, exactly.
Horrible. Okay, love the arts. Protect queer art. So, she's already getting a lot of notices from Hollywood. Like, they're like, who is this girly across the pond? Because they're releasing these movies in the U.S. She wins the New York Film Critics Award for Actress of the Year for Black Narcissus. So, like, she is, like, ascendant for sure. There's a huge fight for which major studio is going to buy her contract to get her to come to Hollywood, and MGM wins the day. And so they, like Gavin mentioned earlier, do this whole big campaign to, like, quote unquote, introduce Deborah Kerr to the U.S. market, which is kind of like, I want to say it's not successful because she was already there. So her first movie is The Hucksters with Clark Gable and Ava Gardner. And like Gavin said, this is where they do all the, like, rhymes with star. They went all in on her being their new young redhead glamour girl. I didn't watch The Hucksters. Of like the first three films that she makes, I didn't watch The Hucksters or If Winter Comes, but I did watch Edward, My Son.
She spends the entire movie out acting Spencer Tracy. That's my opinions. Owen?
Well, isn't that hard to adapt Spencer Tracy, I must say.
You're not wrong.
I've never seen The Hucksters. I just kind of avoided it because I didn't hear the greatest things about it. And also, it's kind of funny with Deborah Kerr in her introduction to America. There's a lot of, I know that Be Kind Rewind went into it in her video about Deborah Kerr, is that she was kind of viewed as this replacement for the previous British redhead actress of the early 40s in Greer Garson, who
Greer.
who she well, the less said about Greer Garson, the better, in my opinion.
You're not wrong.
But yeah, no, I've seen If Winter Comes and Edward, My Son, and I think she's good in them. I think Edward, My Son is an interesting role because she's in it, but she's not the main character,
right?
And I mean, when in the sections where she does become the main character, in the like her final act where she becomes a drunken old mess. Sorry to use those words, but that is she's an older woman. She's drunk. She's a mess.
I mean, yeah, that's the and the movie's not polite about it. So like, I feel like you're fine. Like,
yeah, but I find her even if there's some choices in that certain section of the film where I'm like, oh, you're going a bit too far, Deborah. I'm like, I'm just there for the ride of this moment because it's very far stretched out performance that I sort of enjoy, even though it's not perfect.
Yeah, I think like the vibe is like she's because the first two movies are kind of like she's like, okay, now's my fucking chance to really my thought was like, ha, I'm acting.
Yeah.
And like it's silly, but also I think she's fucking great. I think she like revels in not having to be the glamorous, kind of kept together girly. And I think Hollywood, when they were quote unquote introducing her, wanted her to be like just the very kind of put together and stayed. And like, that's kind of like, Edward, My Son is like kind of, like the one that sticks out because even after that, like it's just like right back to like the prim and proper girlies. She does Please Believe Me, King Solomon's Mines. I did watch King Solomon's Mines, and I guess it was a hit, but it very much is like, listen, in 1950 there was no internet. People were like, oh my god, Africa?
Yeah.
What is going on?
I've seen King Solomon's Mines before. I was not going to watch it again for this. I was like, no thanks.
It's a big epic thing. It's essentially like prim and proper lady wants to go find her husband who has wandered off into some secret African place or something. And she goes there, and there's, of course, a hot white who's like, yes, I can do it, but you'll die probably. And they go, and there's a lot of African people, as there want to be in Africa. And yeah, it's not the most sensitive or whatever, but it's a big hit. Then after that, she's in Quo Vadis. Fucking watch Quo Vadis, because I was like, this looks big and important. Oh my god.
Yeah.
Was like...
That's 3 hours of your life you'll never get back.
Yes, it's so long. I was like, oh my god, not the Oppenheimer of the 50s. And also, Oppenheimer's Jesus. It's... I all I thought was like, is this the era, like McCarthyism is like about to be popping off, and so Hollywood said, what if we make a movie about Jesus?
McCarthyism's already popping off. That's the thing. Like, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
it was funny because they actually had to tone down the original. I'm trying to remember who was the original director of Quo Vadis, but the original director was fired because they assumed that the script was about McCarthyism and that Nero was the way Lawton was portraying Nero, or no, it's not Lawton, it's Ustinov, right?
Yeah, Ustinov.
Yeah, because Ustinov is in his cute boyish phase during that period. The Ustinov is like, they thought that was like a mockery of McCarthy, and they were like, we can't have that.
I think his performance is like the best thing in the movie.
It's the only good thing in the movie. It's the only, like, if the movie's goal is just be like Emperor Nero fucks, then yes, Quo Vadis succeeds. Louis, when we did our Coen Brothers episode, do you remember seeing
Hail Caesar.
Hail Caesar. This is the movie they're parodying in Hail Caesar.
Gotcha. Okay, we're making some Hollywood connections here.
But yeah, specifically of Carr, like, she's pretty, but like first of all, she's up against, the most what is this? Robert Taylor, who is maybe the least charismatic man to ever grace the screen in any movie that he's in. And so, like, she's just given nothing. That poor character, Lygia, like...
Lygia.
It's all bad.
She's Lygian, so her name's Lygia. I was like, wow, groundbreaking. They couldn't even give someone a name.
You are the hostage, Lygia.
Yes.
Welcome to Nero's House of Women. My name is Acte. I am in charge here.
May I ask why I am here?
I would say you have attracted the attention of the Emperor, and you have been commanded to the feast.
But the Emperor has never seen me. There must be some other reason.
Nero ordered you brought here, just as I was brought here 7 years ago.
That movie, whatever, sucks. And then The Prisoner of Zenda. It's just like all of these movies are just like kind of the same thing, and like just like kind of they are beautiful to look at. It's beautiful gowns,
yes,
but like in the most kind of like when I watched Quo Vadis, I was like, this looks like a lot of work. This looked like they must have put a lot of fucking work and effort to make all these costumes. The scene where like Rome is burning, like I was like, this is a massive undertaking.
It's funny because it's a smaller production than a lot of those epics from that time, and yet I believe to this day still has the record for the amount of extras ever used in a movie, which I think is like a weird, interesting sort of dichotomy, because it's like not Ben-Hur and not, Ten Commandments. And
it's funny, like these immediate films to Edward, My Son, which I don't know if we mentioned, but it was her first Oscar nomination.
Oh, that's right.
It's weird that the films that she made immediately are just so boring. So, they make money. I mean, Quo Vadis was the top grossing film of that year, which is wild. It absolutely
was. Quo Vadis, not only was it the top grossing film of the year that it came out, 1951, it played regularly in theaters until 1958. 7 years later.
That's a gag.
And somehow the film is longer than that.
Yeah, exactly. That's true. It was just one showing. That's the problem.
I just remembered, I was like, what the fuck is Prisoner of Zenda about? I know I watched it. I just remembered it's literally like The Parent Trap and like Princess Diaries put together.
I keep describing it to people because the movie Dave is based off The Prisoner of Zenda. And I'm like, have you seen the movie Dave?
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
She's Sigourney Weaver.
That's very astute, Gavin. I like the gag of that. I think it's like a funny bit. I think that's funny, and I think it's like funny how like it's such a classic old thing where it's like, oh, you are different. I saw you and I just you were different and I fell in love. And I'm like, this is dumb, but it's kind of fun.
I have stories about Prisoner of Zenda, but I might save them.
Alrighty. All right.
Yes. Soundboard.
So, I mean, there's more coming. She's in Julius Caesar for like a scene.
But first of all, I just real quick, and I will be very quick about this. She's in Julius Caesar with Greer Garson, and so like as much as you mentioned the Be Kind Rewind video that you can go find on YouTube. Anyone, Owen, thank you for bringing it up because I did mention that we were going to talk about it briefly. she mentions they were in this film together and they were totally chill. Like, Greer Garson did not care. It wasn't a rivalry, even though it was very clear what Deborah Kerr's role was to, like, replace her. Also, just, like, gorgeous, like, that movie. First of all, Julius Caesar, one of my absolute favorite Shakespeare's plays, because it's so fucking petty. It's literally like high schoolers being like, no, he can't be in charge.
Yeah.
And she's so good in her one scene. And I love James Mason. James Mason was born to play Brutus. So, but okay, that's enough of that. But it just, like, I just needed to be like, it's good. It's like good adaptation.
Yeah,
no, I agree.
Like, if people want to, like, talk about Julius Caesar, like, slide into the DMs, because there's a lot there. And it is Shakespeare was so fucking petty. He said, let's just take a cool 45 minutes to be like, no, believe me in my dream. But anyway. She makes a couple flops. Young Bess, Dream Wife. She is in she's realizing, like, something is amiss. Like, my career is stalling out. Like, I need to make a change. Decides to get a new agent to shake things up. And she's really, like, she's not actively being, like, shady to MGM, but she definitely is being like, yeah, I know, they keep putting me in these movies. It's the same thing, right? Yeah. Lovely people, though. So nice. Love them.
Yes, that's what I call poker up the arse parts, and they know exactly what she meant. Deborah would complain about those decorative ladies, that's very boring. They're very boring.
And I think they just went overboard with trying not to change me.
Yes.
And in trying not to change me, it sort of backfired in a way.
Yes. Did you get bored by it, though, by being stuck with this? Or?
Yes, well, I've never been bored acting.
No.
Even if it's not been a very good, not terribly exciting part or terribly exciting movie, I've always absolutely adored it. I just love being somebody else.
The next movie, 1953's From Here to Eternity, is the sharp left turn.
She tells a great story about how she got that role.
I had just, at the time, I changed agents, and I went to a very marvelous man who's dead now called Bert Allenberg. And within, 2 weeks of my being what's known as under his banner, he called me up one day and he said, they're going to make From Here to Eternity at Columbia. And I said, yes. He said, have you read it? And so I said, no, of course. So he said, how about playing the part of Karen? I said, oh, come on, they're never going to think of me for that. And he said, well, I can try. So I waited all day for him to phone me in the evening because he'd gone to see Harry Cohn, this frightening monster of Columbia. And the phone rang in the evening. I picked it up and it was Bert, and I said, well, what? He said, you're right, they kicked me out of the office. I said, I told you not to go in there and make me a fool of me, you see. But he was a very clever man. All he did was go in there, make the suggestion, and leave. And Harry Cohn screamed, you've got to be crazy. Wah, 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 The germ had been sown in his mind. And the next day, it worked. He called in his producer. He called in Fred Zinnemann, who was the director, and said, that crazy Allenberg has got a suggestion for her to play Karen, Deborah Kerr. And they both kind of went like that and said, well, of course. And that's literally how that happened.
Amazing.
Doing From Here to Eternity really kind of broke the mold, if you know
Yes.
what I mean. And the curious thing was that that's what did it. Because I then immediately reverted to doing... Laura in Tea and Sympathy was a complete tea-pouring lady.
Yes.
But because of that one movie, everyone thought, who's this? Had no idea that one could act.
Yes.
This movie, From Here to Eternity, is based off a very famous book at the time that had all the girlies talking. And so becomes, Joan Crawford, former subject of this podcast, was originally going to play this role of this military, general's wife who kind of has been playing with the boys on the base. And a very against type, sexual, seductive, kind of like a sex pot,
It's black and white, but she is blonde in this movie, right?
Yes.
That's okay.
Yeah. Yes, and it's kind of. There were some of these.
As a colorblind person, every now and then I'm like, can I trust my eyes?
Well, this movie, a lot of these movies, I was like, okay, like I have to, I understand when, modern moviegoers are like, oh, I can't tell, it's like the color. I get that, and especially like because she has like the very classic Hollywood face, and so I was like, okay, which role is she playing? And this, because her hair is different, I was like, is this even fucking her? Like, and she got that American accent down.
Yeah,
okay?
It's good. Yeah.
If you're looking for the captain, he isn't here.
And if I'm not looking for him?
He still isn't here.
Well, I'm looking for him. You know where he is?
I haven't the slightest idea.
From Here to Eternity has the very famous scene of them not quite fucking, but basically fucking on the beach, like just waves pounding on their undulating bodies. I liked that movie. She gets nominated for another Oscar for Best Actress.
Yeah, I mean, I've watched it like so many times. I mean, it's a classic for a reason, and I think it because there's like three kind of main plots going on. Like you have everything with Deborah and Bert, then you have Montgomery Clift, who is like, oh, I could watch him in anything. Sorry, I just have to
take a moment for Montgomery.
Yeah. Okay, I've recovered. I think I do. It's kind of is funny. I agree about that beach scene is because like it has that romantic moment, but then it goes into probably the best acting that Kerr does in the movie, which is her kind of basically monologue towards Burt Lancaster. And I think, again, this is another example of how she had such chemistry with the co-stars that she starred with. I mean, she has so much going on whether it's playing like a completely different character, keeping up with the accent, because I mean that's hard for anybody. But she's just so stellar in it. My only complaint is that I just wish there was more of her.
Yeah, I get that.
Yeah, she's not like front and center. The story really is about these men on the space and this war.
And we're going to talk about our next film too, but like this and the next one are really movies that are classic movies that are very good in their own right, but are hindered a little bit by the code. Like this, there's the book that From Here to Eternity is based on. There's, the reason that she can't have children anymore was from a botched abortion, not from a miscarriage. And like the other woman in it is Ava Gardner or no?
Mm-hmm.
Donna Reed.
Oh, Donna Reed.
Yeah, Donna Reed. Yeah. Why did I forget that it's Donna fucking Reed?
Wins the Oscar.
Right. She in it, is a sex worker, but like they can't say that. So she's
it's a club. It's a social club.
She's like a taxi dancer. That's the and so like I don't think these things take that much away from the movie, but at the same time, it is like, what would this have been like if it'd been a slightly more honest adaptation? I mean, I do think the like, just let her have had an abortion. Like, I don't know, that's...
so you're talking about her next movie is Tea and Sympathy, which she originates the role on Broadway, gets Tony nominated for that. And they decide to make it into a movie. It's a kind of a scandal because it's a very... everyone was like, this play is about, this boy who's very effeminate. There's a lot of homosexual themes. It's never going to get past the code. They do it, and it's great. Another Technicolor wonder because it's beautiful. I have no idea how they fucking make a college campus look so gorgeous, but they did it. Not college, high school. It's like a fucking...
Yeah, it's like a prep school. Directed by Vincent Minnelli, who like maybe there's some themes there about his personal life, but I did see somebody that was like, you're never supposed to read into directors oeuvre and I'm like, fuck that. Like that you can absolutely...
Meanwhile, Gavin is like, give me the library card, honey, because I'm reading.
Yeah, it's like Vincent Minnelli making the gay shit. I don't know.
Yeah. Tea and Sympathy, watching this, I was like, I don't know what white culture this is, where you go to a prep school and like you live with a man and his wife and they like take care of you. I don't get it, but that's what's going on. And there's one boy, I think it's Tom, and he's effeminate, doesn't want to like, I mean, honestly, in the movie, he's not even that effeminate. He just doesn't like hanging out with guys. He wants to play guitar and he wants to garden and like he knows how to sew. the gag is like, and in the movie they must have played this up. Like everyone is so ultra mask around him. Everyone always has their fucking shirts off. They're always roughhousing, and she kind of comforts him. And the movie like really spins out. I was telling Gavin earlier, it's just such a rich text. I think both this and From Here to Eternity are such rich texts with so much going on that are so smart and so well done. The movies kind of have to like condense it all down into like, you know, digestible film versions. But I think Tea and Sympathy, gorgeous film, great. This is a lot, and she's so good. She's so good.
I mean, it is a very tender and lovely play, but it had a very startling end that only 20 years ago, if that, had people gasping. They simply couldn't believe that a 35-year-old woman would offer herself to an 18-year-old boy. I mean, the roof fell in.
Years from now, when you talk about this, and you will, be kind.
It's quite incredible how, I mean, she, like, how many times she must have played this role on stage, and the fact that she can make it feel so fresh and so kind of unrehearsed, even like with obviously studio restraints and stuff, keeping certain parts of the text out. I think it's such an incredible film. It's the Deborah Kerr film that I always will recommend because it's definitely probably the greatest lesser known of her films. I think because of sort of the simplicity of the story and how it's set in this one location. It's about this woman and her relationship to this boy who, as you mentioned, is effeminate. And it's such an incredible film. And I again, it's another one that I rewatch all the time just to experience the gloriousness of the like script. The script is just so fascinating. There are just so many great conversation scenes. There's so many great physical moments, like even just I don't know, like especially when Tom's father comes in and how he's not the most masked man in your life. He seemed very insecure to me, and I think through the mere suggestion of that his son might be this way sort of sets him off to maybe like, I feel like if you were able to expand it more, you could get into that father character, and maybe he's had these thoughts in his past. That like that's just something that you can kind of read into because you kind of get to know the inner workings of these people's lives through conversation. It's just such a fascinating piece of drama, and I love it so much.
100%. The trap of masculinity is that there is no answer. There's right. You either are too in it or you're not at all. There's the scene where he's with his roommate who's trying to teach him how to walk, and he eventually is like, "Is it even going to matter? None of this matters." Like, because I've already been like, you know, he is good at his fucking sport. He is good at tennis, and it doesn't matter. You know, it's wild. Like I was like, damn, this kid. Even, and I think in the movie, clearly, like, they've made him to not be gay. He's just this man who has other interests, which I think still works. I think, like, fuck, like, you can be good at sports and, like, and it doesn't matter. It doesn't, the trap of masculinity affects everyone, gay and straight. That's good.
I love the movie as well, and I think you both just covered it so beautifully, so I don't want to add too much to it. The only context I want to add is reality, what's happening outside of this. So she's having like this upturn, a really great time, but she's also aging. Mm-hmm. She didn't come to the US that young, and so sort of the next wave that we've also covered on this is nipping at her heels. Like the reason why she's bleach blonde and From Here to Eternity is that sort of more Marilyn Monroe aesthetic. You have Audrey Hepburn, who was almost given her role in Quo Vadis, but then they were like, no, we need an established actress. But there's literal costume shots of Audrey Hepburn. So like she got that far into it. She loses the Tony for Tea and Sympathy to Audrey Hepburn for Ondine. You know, the next, Hollywood is a fucking fickle beast. And literally, if you're not perpetually 25 years old as a woman, You know, and so like I'm not saying that this is like even a down part of her career, but it's already starting to creep into it.
Yeah, and by this time she's had 3 Oscar nominations and hasn't won.
Right.
And she also loses the Oscar for From Here to Eternity to Audrey Hepburn as well.
Yep.
Yeah, for Roman Holiday, right?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Go to our Audrey Hepburn episode for that with Chels.
With Chels, who is a friend of yours, Owen. So there, and a friend of ours, obviously. She, one of just our lovely, most favorite people on this planet.
Mine too.
So after Tea and Sympathy, you know, I didn't watch these. Oh wait, I did. Did I watch the end of The Affair? No, I didn't. But there's the end of
it's not the best version of that movie.
Okay.
No.
The Proud and Profane. But the real like banger up next after Tea and Sympathy is Rodgers and Hammerstein's The King and I in 1956. Again, we talked about this. Why did we talk about this game? Oh, Rita Moreno.
Yes.
Back in our Rita Moreno episode. Deborah is the main girly in The King and I. She is the titular I in The King and I. And, you know, I think like the most interesting, fun thing about this project is like how she was like, okay, I know I can't sing this well. So I'm just going to become very good friends with Miss Marnie Nixon.
Yeah.
And like, I love the idea of like collaborating.
It's so gracious. It's in a way that Marnie Nixon never experiences in the rest of her career, because there's nothing in Deborah Kerr's contract that says that she can't talk about it. But literally every interview she does, she's like, if this were on stage, I could sing it in a heartbeat because you don't have to be perfect, but it's film, baby. So it's gotta be perfect. And so, yeah, she spends an entire month with Marnie Nixon getting the tone right and she does end up singing one of the songs herself, the whistle song that happens early on in the film. That is Deborah Kerr, solo. But like Marnie, like, it's so funny because I found one interviewer way like in her like 70s that's like, well, you know, you're like one of the top 10 recording artists of all time. She's like, yeah, for not singing. Because that album sold so well.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's just so gracious about Marnie Nixon. And I mean, we've talked about Marnie Nixon tangentially before because she does Audrey Hepburn's vocals for My Fair Lady. She does Maria's vocals for West Side Story. She actually does, during the Tonight quartet, she's not only singing Maria's vocals, but she is also doing Rita Moreno's vocals. So she's like duetting herself. So like, Marnie Nixon's incredibly talented vocalist, and I just think it's so cool. Like no one else sort of treated her that way, and I think because of that is also partially why she loses the Academy Award, because I think when you're supposed to be hush hush about it, you know, and that's what ends up happening to Audrey Hepburn too for My Fair Lady. And then they give it to Julie Andrews for Mary Poppins because she could actually sing it. And I think like if people don't know, which is such a shitty thing because Marnie Nixon should get her flowers. Like,
yeah, 100%.
But I had enough to be able to do some of the lead-ins, and then we found this wonderful singer, Marnie Nixon, who had the great talent to make her voice sound like other people. And we recorded together in a booth. Then Ken Darby, who was the sound head magician at 20th Century Fox in those days, he mixed the voices so perfectly that it really is awfully hard to know when it is not me. But I did sing Whistle a Happy Tune. I think I've heard her having dubbed for other people, but I really do think that, not because it was my film and I was in it, but The King and I, it's really very hard to tell when it isn't me.
I also hate The King and I, by the way, just a quick sidebar, but go on, Owen.
Yeah, I mean, The King and I is such a confounding piece of theater for me because I love it. I love the music so much. I've watched so many live productions of it, and I can fully admit there are so many issues with the plot and just choices that are very dated. That I'm like very aware of that, but I just kind of return to it, and I appreciate there's a skill in lip syncing that maybe if voters at the time were more appreciative of that, because there are many musical movies that in that time that did have dubbing, and there are many musicals since then that didn't, which could have used it when people couldn't sing. That I think lip sync is just as much of a skill if we've learned from like the past 15 years of watching Drag Race, is that is such a talent as well. So I think that she deserves some credit for that. I think she's really good in The King and I. She's kind of the face that I think of when I think of Anna Leon's. It's not Jodie Foster in that movie from the 90s. It's
Anna the King.
Yeah. Or Irene Dunn in the previous like non-musical version of it from the 40s.
She kind of becomes a face of like, you know, when you think of old Hollywood and like old musical theater, like The King and I is just so indelible in like in culture.
It's so beautiful to look at, and you're right, Owen. The songs, I'll give you this. The songs are good, but yeah, it's all the other stuff that bothers me. But you are also correct that she is essentially the Coco Montrese cold-hearted snake, like pointing to her mouth, like I know these words.
Now, how am I ever to learn truth if different English books state different things?
Your Majesty, the Bible was not written by men of science, but by men of faith. It was their explanation of the miracle of creation, which is the same miracle whether it took 6 days or many centuries.
I still think your Moses shall have been a fool.
The next two movies I think are also, you know, kind of big hits for her. She does Heaven Knows Mr. Allison, where Robert Mitchum won't leave her alone.
No.
he is in a lot of her movies.
He's very kind to her, though, I will say. Well, yes. We'll get to that in a bit.
And then An Affair to Remember, also in 1957 with Cary Grant. We talked about this movie in the Cary Grant episode, where fun and flirty, babe. That's the name of the game. I watched this again, and I forgot the ending, and I was like, not this guy.
First of all, I know we've all seen the Tracy Jordan remake of L'Affaire de Remember Black at some point in our life. Of
course.
I love that 30 Rock joke every time. It's always like L'Affaire de Remember Black. I think I told my story on the Cary Grant episode, but you're gonna hear it again. Fond memories of An Affair to Remember, because it was one Easter morning where it was just my dad and I, and we were trying to figure out what to do on this holiday because my mom was working, and An Affair to Remember was on Turner Classic Movies, and we couldn't turn it off. And like cut to the end of the movie, and it's like a grown adult man in his 40s and like a 15-year-old son weeping like she won't tell him, so like I love An Affair to Remember. It's a little stuffy, I'm sure, to most people, but it will always have a very soft spot in my heart.
An Affair to Remember is my least favorite of the filmed versions of it. I love.
You love the Warren Beatty version?
Oh, I forget about that one. Sorry, correction. Sorry, I only think about Love Affair, the original, and then Sleepless in Seattle.
Yes, yeah. And I mean, there's an entire reason why Rita Wilson just spoils the fuck out of An Affair to Remember in Sleepless in Seattle. But, you know, you don't get Sleepless in Seattle unless you do An Affair to Remember. Just saying.
No, of course. I mean, I just don't enjoy it. I mean, I get that it's a thing. Like, it's a film that everybody loves her for. I mean, it's one of those, like, classic romantic films that, like, you have to admit it is. Like, it just is. I might not enjoy it. I certainly prefer Heaven Knows Mr. Allison. Rewatching that this week was quite fun. You know, seeing Deborah Kerr as an action star, returning to back in the habit, as you might say.
Yes.
And while, I mean, she's just so wonderful opposite Robert Mitchum. I think we'll probably get into it with the future films that they do together, but she's just so much fun. She makes probably the most fun non-character ever with her sister Angela in Heaven Knows Mr. Allison.
I just love the idea of like him being like, but you're alone and I'm alone and you're a girl and I'm a boy, so why don't we fuck? And she's like, but God. And he's like, he's like, okay, well, fuck that. You're pretty though, so what's the deal?
Yeah.
There's so much desire in her movies, and there's so much like the tension and pulling and pushing of like, yes, but no, and like secret desire. And Robert Mitchum, number one, is very hot. And if a like sea-washed army man came ashore and like all my nun girlies are gone now, I don't know if I could keep the faith, is what I would say. But
is he hotter though than Cary Grant, which is that other movie that she did, proposes the like, this is much later down the line, but there's a like romance.
The grass is greener.
Yeah, the grass is greener. I was like, babes, no. I was like, she's not leaving Cary Grant for Robert Mitchum.
The thing is, Cary Grant is hot and also like funny.
Yeah.
So that's the combo you cannot top. Also, Cary Grant is homosexual, so
exactly. So he can
so he can do whatever he wants.
Yeah, exactly.
Now listen carefully.
Yes.
If everything goes right, and I mean for both of us, in 6 months, here, I started to write it out.
Should I read it now? All right. Darling, that's me?
Mm-hmm.
You have a date, my beloved, July the 1st at 5 o'clock. But you don't say where.
Will you name the place and I'll obey?
I don't know. I can't think. How about the top of the Empire State Building?
Oh, yes, that's perfect. It's the nearest thing to heaven we have in New York.
The 102nd floor. And don't forget to take the elevator.
No, I won't.
After My Fair to Remember, she does a couple other movies. The only one I've watched is Separate Tables, but Bonjour Tristesse, Eye of the Devil. This is like the peak of her career, but like she is now like on the descent, I would say. The last like really big movie of her career is 1960's The Sundowners, where she's back with Robert Mitchum from heaven knows what's his name, Mr. Allison.
Yes.
And they're in Australia, and they're like, I don't even know what the fuck they're doing. They're just wandering the country to find work and live life.
This is her final Oscar nomination. Also, just a real quick, as to pull the pin out of Robert Mitchum, he was a last-minute replacement because I think Errol Flynn was set to star, and he died. And
but then
so
he drowned.
But then he drowned, and then so he like. She like called up her good friend Robert Mitchum to do it, and he like came in, but they gave him the same contract, so he was effectively the star, and he was like, no, her name should be above the not my name. Like, she asked me to do this, and I guess he even told them, like, they were like, oh, are you sure you want to do that? And he's like, you could build a statue of me bowing to her if you want. Like, I don't care.
Love that.
So that's very cool of him. But yeah, you're right. This is the sort of, and she's 40 now, which is essentially 80, which is essentially 2009. Like, you know, in Hollywood, she's dust and bones in comparison to what Hollywood wants to put on screen.
Like Gavin mentioned, this is her last Oscar nomination. So if we're keeping track, 6 nominations, never wins. She, does The Naked Edge. She does The Innocents, which I'm sure Gavin is wet in his pants all about.
End meeting.
The Innocents, which is based on The Turning of the Screw.
Turn of the Screw. It's
Gavin,
not turning.
She's turning. We've talked about this this story before on the podcast. I can't remember.
Well, we talked about specifically The Innocents in our Ghosts on Films episode.
Ghosts on Film, yes.
Because it was my 5-star review.
Yes.
I love The Innocents, and I could talk about The Innocents. This whole 2 hours could have been me talking about The Innocents, and from the brilliant direction by Jack Clayton to the Freddie Francis's like gorgeous black and white cinematography. I mean, he was using like such bright lights to get that contrast in it, that in between takes Deborah Kerr had to put on sunglasses.
Mm-hmm.
They did things like they made candles with several wicks wound together so the candles would be brighter when characters held them. And she's just so good. And what sets this adaptation apart from most of the versions of Turn of the Screw is much like that man that met her way back in England and was like, you're the virgin, aren't you? The character as written is young, is like 20 something. And what works for Deborah Kerr is she's 40. and she's playing this like wide-eyed, she's just as innocent as these children. It's for those who don't know, Turn the Screw, this woman comes on as a governess to two children at this isolated manor in the countryside. Their previous governess ran away with the stable master. There was maybe some stuff there. They both died. And so she's like comes into the situation in a very naive way and lets these two children sort of run rampant because her mind is playing tricks on her, or the spirits the spirits of the former groundskeeper and governess are in the house possessing the children, making them do naughty things. I fucking love The Innocent. Like, everything about The Innocents is so good, and I think she's great. And I think once again it's one of those situations where like her age like only played into her favor.
Another film that I rewatched the morning, time zones. No, I love this film so much.
Owen watched 8 movies this morning.
Sorry, 9 actually.
Yeah. Time zones are crazy.
I know, it makes no sense. I'm already in tomorrow. Yeah, no, I love The Innocent so much. I mean, I wish I was watching it in October. It's like the perfect Halloween season film for me. No, I agree. It's just so fabulously produced. I mean, the cinematography is amazing. The sound work is so stellar. Like, the fact that it's so echoey whenever they're in the house is such a genius choice. Like, you would think, like, knowing that was a choice and not like a mistaken sound quality just makes the house feel that much more massive and ghostly and sort of like intriguing. And then, it's just, I feel like, while not the casting choice you would have expected, like knowing the original novel and the fact that like the character isn't named, right. Whereas I feel like you take so much of Deborah Kerr's history to this film of her playing, whether it's The King and I, whether it's these parts where she played this woman looking after children, whether she played this kind of like put upon woman. She has that sort of like wonder about when she first comes to the house, which is really enjoyable. Then she has the intelligence of later on when she's like explaining to the current like how maid about this is what we're going to do to save these children, and you just see the like determination in her eyes. There's so much great eye work going on from Deborah Kerr here, and I think the camera really picks up on it because it's always closing up on her eyes, being like either in fear for her life or like determined to save these children who she's just met, and who she's not met as just the children. She's just met them as the possessed creatures that they've become. But she just
assholes.
Sort of exactly. But they're so much fun little assholes. These children are like.
She lied to me. Well, it amounted to a lie.
Oh, now, miss, I've never known either of the children to tell lies. Why would they?
Why? Because they are both playing, or being made to play, some monstrous game. I can't pretend to understand what its purpose is. I only know that it is happening. Something secretive and whispery and indecent.
Going into the 60s, I think, we have to talk about The Night of Iguana. That's 1964. Another play that's turned into a movie. I think she's, I don't think she's at her best here, but I think it's because like the movie's not about her. I think like the text is more interesting than she is here.
Yeah.
I would say, that ending though, my God, he's dead.
I like everything in Night of the Iguana except for the titular Night of the Iguana.
I like the Night of the Iguana.
Well, I do like the ending. I do like what you're saying, but it's funny because I think you're right. I think it is like that brief portion where he's like tied up and she's talking to him is the thing I don't buy. Everything else leading into it, everything else after it, I'm in for a penny, in for a pound. But just that, I don't know why that specific doesn't work for me, because I do think she's very good in it, and I think Richard Burton. Thank you. And Ava Gardner is amazing in it. She's
think so like, good. Oh my god,
she's so fucking good. It's funny. John Huston famously So everybody that's in this movie was involved with each other at some point in time. Deborah Kerr's husband, who she was married to, I believe is an ex of Elizabeth Taylor, who was with Richard Burton at the time and shooting in Mexico. John Huston gave everybody gold-plated guns with gold-plated bullets with everyone's name carved into them, and said to use it if you ever feel stressed. And it like cut the tension on the set immediately.
Wow.
Can you imagine your director giving you a gift of a literal weapon with a bullet with like everybody else's name on it? Like,
wow, that's some Fall Out Boy lyrics right there. Cock it and pull it. Yeah, I had never seen this movie or read anything about it, but I just like the whole idea of like, release yourself, babes. Release yourself from like, the stress or the pressures of this world, and we are here to fuck and have fun, and like no one's perfect. She cuts that iguana loose, baby, cuts him loose, and I was like, wow, rich text here. I think it's in a lot of the movies, or at least like my favorite Deborah Kerr movies are these movies where she really gets to dive into these richly painted, thoughtful movies where, it's just kind of like, I don't know, life affirming, this kind of silly. But yeah, this one, similar to like Tea and Sympathy, I'm just like, oh, there's so much she's just like kind of wrapped up in here. It's great. Unfortunately, we're kind of getting to the end of her.
She knows it too, though. Like the writing's on the wall.
Yeah, she does Marriage on the Rocks with Frank Sinatra and Dean Martin. It's just she was in Casino Royale.
The parody James Bond movie.
Yes, she's the oldest Bond girl
until Monica Bellucci.
Oh, that's
Spectre.
Right.
Deborah Kerr post The Innocents is something I don't like to think about.
She died in that house. She died.
I mean, she might as well have.
Yeah, but you're right, Owen. Like, there's not a lot post The Innocents. She, just to kind of like zip through this, she goes back to doing some theater. She finds some success there. In the 80s, she has like a kind of little resurgence when she does TV movies. Nothing I would really say. She was nominated for an Emmy in A Woman of Substance.
I think she's good in A Woman of Substance. I have seen that very, very long miniseries.
I was gonna say that's what kept me from watching it. It was so long.
How long is it?
It's like, I don't know, 10 hours? Maybe?
Oh my God.
But it's oh, sorry, it's not 10 hours. It's like 5. Sorry.
Okay, I was like, that's too much.
But it's a miniseries.
Still a lot.
It's a TV series. If you think about TV series, you watch like 10 hours of it just like over the course of 10 weeks.
Right.
So like that kind of like comes to the end of her career. Really quickly, we didn't mention this a lot, but she was married to Anthony Bartley in 1945. I think I read somewhere that, they married very young. They were different people, like
he was jealous.
Yeah, I mean, like she became one of the it girls of Hollywood. They had 2 daughters. So they divorced in 1959. Her second marriage was to author Peter Vertel. I don't fucking know. So yeah, I mean, she was kind of like, she became this legend of Hollywood, old glamour, She was kind of a queen of like one-liners. Like, I love, like, in that Be Kind Rewind video, there's like that quote where she's like, oh, I wish I could be Marilyn Monroe. I want to like tell fun stories. Or that like a censor was like, oh, we never have to censor any of your movies. They're also like prim and proper. And she was like, oh, how dull.
Yeah. She's like, great.
That's fucking amazing. Like we mentioned way up top, in 1994, she was awarded the honorary Oscar by Glenn Close. And she looks so cute. And she comes out in like her gown. And
she talked about this in her stage career. She said she never stopped being nervous. And I love that there's to that point, when she accepts the award, she's like, I've never been so nervous in my entire life.
I know.
It's so sweet.
Darling.
Yeah, I love watching that clip because she almost like drops the Oscar.
Yes.
It's so sweet, especially like when you think about the fact that she never won a competitive one, is that she's given this, honor that is like not a surprise because it's announced prior. And it's just like, she's just such an adorable woman. And
yeah,
you just see people so happy for her. And it's why we need honorary Oscars on the Oscar ceremony, because
I was just going to say they don't televise that portion anymore, do they?
No, they didn't. Even this year, they didn't even televise a little like clip reel of the honorary awards, which they usually do, but not this year.
Yeah. Well, that's why I don't watch them anymore. That's the reason.
Oh, Gavin. Gavin loves fighting about the Oscars. Don't get her started. Deborah died when she was 86 years old in October of 2007. She had Parkinson's, horrible disease. But her legacy is just so incredible. I going through this and watching all these, I was just like, damn, like she was of this era that is so magical and like beautiful, and like they really don't make them like they do anymore. All that being said, why don't we get into our picks, and we'll start with our 1-star reviews. Okay, so Eoin, as our guest, you have the wonderful honor of picking and telling us your 1-star review first.
Yes. So my 1-star review, there are so many choices I could make, is Quo Vadis. That is time of my life I'll never get back. I also rate it quite low is because of the lack of use of Deborah Kerr. Like she's such a minor part of it. Try as she may, she's stuck with this very boring film where the most exciting part is with Peter Ustinov playing what I consider a version of a toddler.
Yeah. Divinity. Imagine someone calling you Divinity. What the fuck? I was like, that's her drag name? Divinity?
That's what I make people call me. Is that
I think
wrong?
that is a drag queen name.
Yeah.
100%. Yeah, this is part of the... she's playing Lydia. And I think I just remember... So, like, the whole vibe is that...
She's Christian.
She's a Christian.
Yeah.
But, like, she got adopted by these... people for some reason, because like their religions have been murdered or something. I don't know.
Louis got a lot from this movie is what we're saying.
I will say she does look snatched with that fucking ponytail.
Yeah. She looks good in a toga. Bitch, give her a toga.
The purple, it's gorge. But like, there's so many movies where like they make her like a Christian girly, and she's like, guys, no, I can't fuck. I just can't do it. Because God. And the guys are like, what do you mean? I'm going to buy you. Like in Quo Vadis specifically, he's like, well, if I just buy you, you're mine. And like, what's the deal?
I love that you did that like specific Robert Taylor voice. Like, I'm acting.
Yeah. The moment where he grabs the crucifix off the wall and breaks it, he's like, oh, Jesus. Bye. And this also made me think like, isn't it so crazy how I guess there was a time where people were like, no, like that guy, he's Jesus, it's Son of God. And they were like, okay, I just bought you. What the fuck are you saying? Like, let's fuck now. Like, what a time, huh?
No, we have to leave room for Jesus.
Yeah. Very good pick, Eoin.
Oh, Marcus. Oh, this is the beauty I knew.
You'd have known it had to happen when I watched you leave the gathering.
You were there?
Yes. I should have known what I really wished. You with me always as my wife. Will you do that, Lydia? Will you give me the greatest triumph a man ever had? Be my wife?
Oh, yes, Marcus.
Gavin, what do you got?
I agree with Eoin. Lots and lots to choose from, unfortunately. And I think part of it is just like, Hollywood didn't truly... They brought her over under false pretenses and they didn't know what to do with her. But... And I do think there's worse films. I would have went with Quo Vadis, like, because I just think it's awful. but I think the one that really stuck out to me was 1952's Prisoner of Zenda. And I think because I was watching and I was like, something is off. Like, something is off about what she's doing. And then I like read that, you know, when Farley Granger got, like, essentially he saw or Stuart Granger, sorry, different Grangers. Stuart Granger saw the original movie and was like, I want to make that movie, but we shouldn't change the script. So MGM buys the rights to remake the movie from Fox. They use the same script. They use the same score. And under the direction of Mayer, the director, Richard Thorpe, has been told to project the 1930s film in between scenes so they can copy it exactly. And so she's not acting in this movie. Deborah Kerr is literally playing the actress from the previous version. She's doing that, and it's awful. It's like, literally, it's the weirdest thing because she's not giving a performance. She's being asked to play somebody else's performance. And once again, I did not know this watching this movie, but I knew that there was something wrong. I was like, she's not being Deborah Kerr.
There's something ain't right.
Yeah. And so for that alone, and because it is the movie that like got her to be like, no, this has to stop, guys. I think, yeah, it's truly her worst performance on film.
I kind of liked it. I was like, this is a very stupid film.
Well, yeah, I was going to say,
fun.
but you weren't watching it for, you know, Madeline Carroll is the actress that she was mimicking.
Are you worried about something?
Worried? With you in my arms? I was just thinking there'll never be another night quite like this, or another waltz quite like this.
I'll never forget tonight as long as I live, if that's what you mean.
Nor will I.
James Mason recollected in his autobiography about this movie just one sentence, which was, the costumes were ghastly. And I agree.
There you go.
Ghastly gowns.
Wow,
Ghastly gowns.
Oh my God. We found like the Funhouse mirror inverse. Beautiful gowns, ghastly gowns. Love it. That's going to be part of Mixed
that's
lore.
in the lexicon now. Congratulations, Owen. You've changed the show.
You did it.
I did it.
Yes. Speaking of which, my 1-star review is 1950s King Solomon's Mines.
Yeah.
It's just like, for me, the pinnacle of like, she is just there to do plot for like this man and his whole thing. I will say this is again another movie where I thought like, this looks like a lot of fucking work. And the movie even starts with, it's like, we want to thank the nation of Gambia or wherever they fucking went. And like, I was like, oh, like this must have taken a lot of effort. And I was more interested in like, I read about how the person who was doing like this location scouting became like really like was the person for all African movie making because they had, you know, made these relationships with different countries there. And I was like, that's fucking cool and interesting. I was like, this movie unfortunately is just fucking not. Like we mentioned before, she's like this stuffy British lady whose husband just has never come back, and so goes to Africa to hire this man to take her on this journey. It's very much like, let's make this prissy girl go through hell, and like, you know, she's always falling, always like kind of like harumphing around. She's hot, she's tired. It's just all of the worst aspects that we've been talking about of her career and what Hollywood wanted from her in one movie, and I think this is it. So I would not recommend.
How long will it take us to get there? Weeks? Months, perhaps. I don't know. I've never taken a woman on safari with me before.
Have I been a handicap?
I know, Mrs. Curtis, but the fun hasn't started yet.
When it does, I'm sure we'll all enjoy it.
But enough of the tragedy and the ghastly gowns. Let's get into our 5-star reviews. Owen, what do you got?
Well, thankfully, similar to 1-star reviews, there are also multiple choices that I could do for 5-star.
Agreed.
So I'm making a choice that I hope leads you to make choices that I would also make. Is I'm going to go with Teen Sympathy as my 5-star Deborah Kerr film.
Lovely.
It's a film that I stump for. I will always recommend it to anyone looking for something that they've never seen before, even with the restraints of the Hays Code. I think the bare bones of the text is still in existence that makes it such a compelling drama. And when I think about the film that I want to represent Deborah Kerr at her best, I feel like this is the choice that I have to make because it heavily relies on her performance. I don't even think we didn't even get into the ending of that film where you just have her gorgeous voiceover, where she's reading this well, the letter is being read by Tom, who's in the kind of bookends of the film, which reveal he's basically reading this letter about her life and how that incident. I don't even think we discussed the incident where they lied together, basically, when we discussed the film, which is major. I just think she's so brilliant in it. She's just such a force, and it's definitely a film that I will always recommend to people if they've never seen it before. So it's definitely my 5-star for Deborah Kerr.
It's weirdly a tearjerker for me because the play ends when they have sex, essentially, and she has that moment where she says, you know, when you think of this in the future, and you will be kind. And that, I don't know what was, Dan was watching it. This was a couple years ago. And like, he like turned to me and I'm like tears streaming down my face. Cause I think I think that relationship is so beautiful because regardless of sexuality and gender, I think as a young person, you do form these connections with older people. And she is also formed this it's a really complicated, really hard to describe, like emotional connection to this boy. And it's like sad. It's so sad, but so beautiful. Like they're both just lost, but he's like at the early part of his life and there's a chance that he could still be found. And I think that she thinks like, this is it for me. Like this is, you know, so this moment is very meaningful for her as well.
Yeah, I think that's the brilliance of this story and of how, God, who fucking wrote this? Because he also did the adaptation. So like he was the one who had to like take the scalpel to his own work.
Robert Anderson?
Yes. And it's so like, oh, my mind is fucking blown by you saying that, Gavin, because you're right. Like they are both lost. And she, like one of the brilliant things about this that you could also pick apart is she has already had a marriage before, was already married, and her first husband has died in the war. And, you know, with the big fight that she has with her current husband, who they reveal have only been married for 1 year.
I know. It's shot. When that revelation comes on, I was like, huh?
Yeah. And they're already like in the dumps. She's telling him like, we don't touch anymore. He's basically chastising her about like that first marriage when you married that boy because you were so young and he was so young, and how she doesn't want to be a lover. She wants to be a mother. There's just so many layers and this idea of her, she kind of like sees Tom as this like lost soul and sees herself in him. And it's, Teen Sympathy fucking bangs. The incident that Owen was mentioning is essentially like, he is trying his best to like present masculinity, do masculinity right, prove to himself, prove to everyone the thing. And basically his roommate is like, you should go hook up with the town sex worker girly. And he's like, okay, I guess. Deborah Kerr finds out about this, tries to like stop him, tries to be like, no, let's hang out, like whatever. And they end up kissing, but it's like drama. And so he runs away, goes to the sex worker, and she works at the diner. So she recognizes him and she's like, what do they call you? What do they call you? Like, there's something they call you. And he's like, no, nothing. It's fine. And he's very awkward and nervous and doesn't really know what to do. She also has this realization. Oh, they call you Sister Boy. Sister Boy is what they call you. And he has like this mental break and fucking runs into her kitchen, grabs a knife, and tries to like commit suicide. And it's fucking horrible. And like the ways that this movie and the writing is so fucking good, where they're able to double down and like really, no pun intended, twist a knife on like, this horrible thing has already happened. And then his dad comes in and is like, oh, they got my boy fucking and sucking, eh? And it's like, God, the idea that like the father would be proud of this. And then when they tell him like, I know that's what you think that happened, but that's not what happened. That, you know, he tried to kill himself. And because he couldn't perform this, you know, thing of masculinity.
Excuse me, Mr. Lee, but you seem rather pleased.
Well,
You know Tom will be expelled for being with this girl.
oh, now a boy can't keep in bounds all of his life, Laura. It was just very foolish of him to be found leaving the place by the school police.
I think you're proud of him. Perhaps for the first time in his life, you're proud of him because he was found out of bounds with her.
I suppose it is hard for a woman to understand, but believe me, Laura, in years to come, it'll be just another amusing smoking car story.
There's so many moments like that. There's so many moments that are so good, and she's particularly just like, she's trying her best. Go play with the boys. Go. Oh, I'll set you up with a girl. I'll teach you how to dance. All these things. It's just fucking brutal. So good. Excellent choice, Owen. Gavin, what do you got?
If you've been listening to this, you probably assumed that my 5-star review would be The Innocents. But surprise, bitch!
Uh-oh.
It's actually not, and not because, I mean, it could easily be my 5-star review, but I've done that, and I think you should all go watch The Innocents and enjoy it. But I think my favorite representation of Deborah Kerr on film is The Life and Death of Colonel Blimp, which I know is surprising because you were like, what is this movie? But I think there's a really, you know, even though it is from a man's perspective, there's this really beautiful playground that she's given where she's allowed to play these three different women. She's allowed to bring something very different to each of them. I love the first woman that she plays, who I believe is Edith Hunter, and she's this British woman who's gone over to Germany to teach English, but essentially because she's like, I need to fucking escape society, I need to escape men, and I'm not interested in doing all of this like lovey-dovey shit. Like, I'm here to like live my life and be a full person, and I don't need to define myself through men. And yeah, she does eventually end up marrying and going off with a guy. But I like this character. I like this boldness.
How do you know what is the best place for a young girl? Are you a girl? Have you any daughters?
I said.
You see, while you men have been fighting, we women have been thinking. Think for yourself, Mr. Candy. What careers are there open to a woman? She can get married.
I was just going to say.
Yes, supposing she doesn't want to get married, she can go and be a governess. But what does a governess know, Mr. Candy? Nothing, I assure you. Then what can she teach the children who are in her charge? Very little except good manners, if she herself has good manners.
And I like that then when she's introduced the second time fully as Barbara Wynn, she's given this like really softer, but it's not presented as like a woman who has given up her agency in life. It's just a woman who has fallen in love. And then her Johnny Cannon character, who's just like madcap, like she's in the like comedy section of the film where she's like trying to warn him that his own army has turned against him. And on top of that, the movie's just so deep. The movie's like literally, I see it as a big anti-war movie. I think the you know, there's these prolonged scenes of men in rooms trying to decide how a duel should be run, and like the subtext is like, this is barbaric. No matter how many rules you give to it, no matter how many like pomp and circumstance you give to it, like war, this like men are just barbarians, and like it doesn't matter if you like put an accent on it. Beautiful movie, totally worth your time. I know the running time can seem, listen, I'm a huge film fanatic, and it took me forever to watch it because the running time felt arduous, and it is not. It's a wonderful, beautiful movie.
I remember, I mean, like that was one of the first movies I watched for this, and I just remember thinking like, oh, this is so silly.
No, and it does, and it has, I mean, Powell and Pressburger have such a good sense of humor about themselves, but I think that's why their stuff works too, is because there's always, the joke is always a little layered, where it's like, you know, they're saying one thing, it's like, but this is what we really mean.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Good pick.
Yeah, I mean, I think if people are going to commit as much time as they did to Oppenheimer in this last year,
yeah,
I think you can absolutely take the time to watch a shorter film about the war.
Yeah, and that I'm sure comes to a very similar conclusion. I've still not seen Oppenheimer, but I'm sure it's not like war is great.
Correct. Okay, my 5-star review is 1946's I See a Dark Stranger.
Oh.
Just
I'm gonna have to watch it this afternoon now, aren't I?
It's just like she gets to do so much in the same way that you mentioned in Colonel Blimp. Like it feels like she's having the most fun here, and I think directed by Frank Launder. The style of this movie is just so precise. There's a lot of amazing lighting tricks going on and lighting moments where, again, like she is this paranoid, kind of radicalized woman who grows up just like her name is Birdie Quilty. Good old Birdie Quilty. Yeah, thank you for that. That she is of your people, and she grows up listening to like her father telling pubs of drunk men about like all the fighting during the revolution, and you know, just like you're supposed to be proud to be Irish and fuck the English and like we're gonna fucking fight until we die, like, and she's like, fuck yeah. And at the beginning of this, you know, she turns 18, her dad's dead, and she's like, I'm out of here, I'm about to go fuck some shit up. And they're like, are you okay though? Like, there's been some treaty. Literally, when she gets to the UK, they're like, there was a treaty signed, and she's like, what does that have to do with anything? Like, let's fucking keep going. And then, you know, yeah, I just loved all of the, I think from a technical aspect, her acting, she does so much inside, and she has like this really great emotive face. And when she's supposed to meet like, another spy on a train, but she doesn't know who it is. And so she's just like, kind of like her eyes are darting around, the lights are playing over, and she's supposed to like say this thing to like lower the window down. That will be the cue. But like before she gets to say it, someone already fucking lowers the window, and she's like, fuck, like what am I supposed to do now? Like, and it's like, it's funny and it's also thrilling at the same time.
Isn't anybody going to say anything at all? Nobody going to say they've no objection to the window being down for 10 minutes? Oh, come on, somebody, speak, will you? Have you no sense at all? Haven't I done everything Mr. Miller told me I have? What am I going to do now?
Because she is just a degular girl. She is not a fucking real spy. And also, she has no idea what she's doing. When she realizes what she's like, when she gets caught up in the Nazis, and like for the Germans, she's like, oh, this book is literally telling them like where D-Day is going to happen. And like, and she's like, I can't give them this information. Like, I'm actually a traitor. Like, she doesn't realize what's going on.
She's totally spies.
Hello. There's a love story. There's also her, like, there's moments where she's like thinking like, he's British, but like, he's actually kind of cool. Like, that's weird. Which is like fucking funny. I think she's beautiful. Like, all of the things that we love about Deborah Kerr, I think, are in this movie, and it's in a spy flick that we don't get to see her a lot in other things. Yeah. So it's something that's very specific and fun. Yeah. So yes, I See a Dark Stranger / The Adventuress in the US. Very fun, but also dramatic and thrilling, all the things. Are there any other movies that we think like need shout outs that like she's amazing in?
I was so stuck between Teen Sympathy and Black Narcissus.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, I mean, what made me go for Teen Sympathy was that Deborah Kerr is the star first and foremost. Yep. Whereas while she's incredible in Black Narcissus, the film is the star. Like, the production is the star.
I also want to shout out, I mean, like, From Here to Eternity is just, my fucking God. Like, to see this woman turn, she said, oh, sexy bombshell? Yeah, let's do that. and just like fucking kills it. To your point, Owen, like she's not like the main focus of the movie, but like God, what a fucking cast of people they got together and just to really make a banger. We mentioned earlier, like Julius Caesar, she's not in it a lot, but
no,
it's fucking good.
She gets a great seat, and I would go to bat also for the Night of the Iguana. Like I really do love.
Yep.
I love the scenes between her and Ava Gardner, like as well. And
when they're fighting over like his name's Shannon. Like I see the vibes between you, and she's got her like little like cart full of like. Oh wait! Oh my God! I just remembered that Ava Gardner has 2 Mexican boys who like shake maracas every time they show up. I was like, this was the 60s.
The wild thing about Night of the Iguana is to me that Betty Davis originated that role on stage.
I know,
and like I love Betty Davis, but like Ava Gardner is the almost perfect choice of casting for that role.
Absolutely, like a perfect age for her career. Yeah, just so like
boys, let's fuck in the ocean.
Yeah, rich text, a lot of rich text,
and then obviously The Innocents. I'm just going to say that again until everybody watches it. So
yes, absolutely. Oh, and I have a soft spot for Perfect Strangers. I think her and that guy fucking fighting. Like, there's a lot from like that first phase of her career in the UK.
Well, that's why they wanted to bring her over. You know, but you're right. Perfect Strangers. Her cousin Balky.
So
that joke is for only our 40-year-olds in the audience. Nobody else is for that joke.
But okay, before we get out of here, let's do our mixed reviews review.
My 1-star review was 1952's The Prisoner of Zenda.
My 1-star review is 1950's King Solomon's Mines.
My 1-star review was 1951's Quo Vadis.
I like that it's all like 1950, 51, 52. We were like, these were the years she was not doing it.
Yeah, not doing it.
My 5-star review is 1943's The Life and Death of Colonel Blimp.
My 5-star review is 1946's I See a Dark Stranger / The Adventuress.
My 5-star review is 1956's Tea and Sympathy.
You're the only one who picked one from her Hollywood days.
Yeah.
Funny enough.
Shocking.
Like, you're right. Like, let's be
right.
Yeah, you're right. Like, let's be honest.
Okay, let's get into our fast forward. Well,
fast forwards are always difficult when it's like our subject is dead. So I would love to see her on stage propped up, I guess.
She's already been there, done that, girly. She's done it all.
I don't think we need an AI generated version of Deborah Kerr. We already are possibly going to suffer that with James Dean, and I don't think I need that Deborah Kerr.
I didn't even know that about the James Dean one. Oh God.
You know what I was thinking about though for this? Like Tea and Sympathy seems so ripe for a like modern update. Like how would that work? Like I was thinking first of all, like do those types of schools exist anymore?
Right.
And then number 2, like the movie is very like they must have added this to be so careful. They're like he turns 18 tomorrow, and like they end up together like on his birthday when he turns 18. But like it reminded me very much of the like, you know, Call Me by Your Name vibes of like older, younger stuff going on. But like this idea, especially when it comes to like gender identity, and like there certainly is, you know, I just thought like his whole, the big thing is like how he wants to be a folk musician. And I was like, I don't know anything more like hot and masked than like wanting to be a rock star. Like it's just so hard to like sell that. And so like, but the thing is, I know that it still exists. And certainly, you know, a guy who likes to sew and like is literally going to do drag for this play wouldn't go down in a lot of places, but because of media and just the time we're living in, it's like I would be very interested in to see like how that would work. Would it have to be like something done in the 80s? I don't know, but like
that's an interesting thought. I just went upstate to see my 14-year-old, now 15-year-old niece's high school musical, and it was Something Rotten, which is a show I saw on Broadway and I don't remember anything of, but I now remember her version. And one of the characters in that is a drag performance, is a boy dressed as a woman in high school. And I was shocked to see it because I was talking with Dan about it because I forced him to come along too, which he was like Never again, thank you. He hates musicals anyways. And I was like, that's wild. And he's like, yeah, the thing you don't understand, Gavin, is the kids are all gay now, but the parents aren't.
Right.
And so that was probably the reaction that some of the parents were having in the audience too, like, my word. And I was like, well, I wasn't like, my word. I was just happy to see it.
Right.
You know,
well,
and,
I mean,
and
when you think
like
about
that
like
sort of like, would that work nowadays? Because like, kids are all gay now, which is like,
well, like when you think about like the leading men, like the hot young leading men of today are all doing that like baby girl thing, right? Like it's like they're slight men, their masculinity comes from being like these waifs. We don't have, you know, the Channing Tatums, like it's not the thing. Like it's Timothée Chalamet, it's that tall one, whatever his fucking name is.
Jacob Elordi,
that one,
Frankenstein's Monster Jr.
Yeah, like and they're all good. Like it's all good. But like I was thinking, like if Timothée Chalamet was in a version of Tea and Sympathy right now, like what would that be? What would that look like?
Right.
What would he be doing? Like is it so? Because would it the dumb jocks who are like, bro, like you're not like, and I think if it was gonna happen, like it would definitely, you know, have to be in a very conservative place. Maybe like there's a religious aspect going on. I think obviously we would need to like bring in all of the homosexual shit and more. I just thought like they're I think the best plays are always things that are timeless that can, you know, and I think Tea and Sympathy is just one of those. Like I think that would certainly work. I think the same for Night of Iguana, like this idea of like releasing yourself from the pressures of society. Like that's what both of those plays are about, right? Expectation.
Rewrite that scene, but I think you're right. Like the thesis of that scene is great. I just didn't like the execution. Sorry, you were saying something, Owen.
Yeah, I don't know why it's just come to my mind because you mentioned Timothée Chalamet. I feel like if they were to do a version of Tea and Sympathy, because also it's never been on Broadway again since this original production, which is wild to me because it's such a. I mean, obviously, never saw the stage show.
Didn't make it. Couldn't get ticks.
No, I couldn't afford them.
So something we haven't let you guys in on is Owen is eternal.
Yeah, I don't know why the casting of. I don't know why Lily Rabe is coming to mind. I think it's because when you mentioned Timothée Chalamet, they did that film Miss Stevens together.
Oh yeah,
where she
also
played...
she looks good as a nun.
That's true.
So maybe
that's
it's
true.
that.
That's true. So I don't know why she's coming to mind as like, oh, I would be interested in seeing her version of this.
Right. Well, I was thinking of like Julianne Moore. Maybe it's the red hair, but like.
Well, I think Julianne Moore has made this movie several times. I think that's maybe why you're thinking of it because Julianne Moore is. Yeah, I was gonna say Julianne Moore is always making movies where she's like an older lady and there's a younger like yeah.
Wait, is that?
It just always happens to be her son.
Yes, exactly.
Is it Don John? The one where
that's I don't know where you're pulling that from. I mean, I know. Yeah, but you're right. You're right.
She's like
right.
she has sex with a younger man. What's his name?
Jonathan, I forgot about
Joseph Gordon-Levitt. Yeah,
Joseph Gordon-Levitt.
Okay, so how about that?
No, you're right. You're right. When you're right, you're right.
Now a Todd Haynes version of Tea and Sympathy with Julianne Moore, I'd be interested in that.
Yeah.
Fuck yeah.
Could Charles Melton come back?
And following it up with Todd Haynes' Don John.
Did Joseph Gordon-Levitt direct that?
He did. That's why we don't fuck with him anymore.
I think Scarlett Johansson's excellent in that movie.
She is.
Yeah.
Anything else we want to say about Deborah, her incredible career, her legacy? Who? I mean, obviously we've talked about like Glenn Close,
right?
You know, kind of being in that legacy, but I also just think like Deborah kind of feels like one of the blueprints of like the regal British actresses that we've come to expect and like come to know. Like they.
Well, Owen's comparison to Emma Thompson is also extremely good. Yeah,
I was thinking also about who's the actress that took Glenn Close's Oscar.
Olivia Colman.
Of Olivia Colman.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's true. Has Olivia Colman really made any American film? Like maybe the Lost Daughter, but like I feel like she's still working within that British realm.
Yeah.
That is a good comparison, Olivia Colman. I just to bring it back to like wrap up Deborah real quick, for as much as it sort of haunted her, the like stately woman, she was able to parlay it into such a great strength, and unfortunately, like, it still never got her. And once again, we say this all the time on the show, the Oscars do not matter until they do. And it would have been nice to see her awarded in a competitive category at some point. But she didn't need it because she knew her worth. And I think, like, I agree, it would have been nice if she was given something more challenging. But the fact that she did have these moments every now and then to like play with it, the teen sympathies of the world, the innocence of the world, or even the Dark Stranger one that I see Dark Stranger. Like, that, being able to play with that idea of like who the audience expects her to be and sort of like morphing it into something else it's such a delight. It's such a true delight to like see. I don't know. As I was saying up top, Owen, I'm really happy you asked to do this because I truly didn't know I loved her as much as I did until now.
Yeah. Also thinking Helen Mirren, silly gal who's a stately woman.
But she's almost a contemporary. That's
no. We have I think there's a great legacy of like stately women who are actually silly billies, and I like that.
Yeah, I'm so glad what you just said about this sort of because that's what I said at the top of the podcast, why I chose her, was that there's the expectation of what Deborah Kerr is. But I love that you just said that she's so much more than that expectation, because that is what why I chose her. And I'm glad that you've seen that through seeing her work. So I claim it a success to discuss Deborah Kerr.
Absolutely.
Success. Well, thank you, Owen, so much for coming on the show. This was
Eoin
truly
Daly,
a delight.
everyone.
Yes.
But before you go, let's give you a chance to, plug your stuff. Where can people find you? What are you doing online?
Yeah, well, thank you for having me on. Years from now, when you speak of me, please be kind.
And we will.
And we will.
Yeah, you can find me mostly on Twitter, just discussing films daily. You can find me
on... pun.
Didn't intend to do so. You could also just find me on Letterboxd, and you can occasionally find me on other people's podcasts, because I do not have the skill nor the time to create my own podcast. So there are gladly many people who have welcomed me on to discuss a lot of things, including yourselves.
She's a tip spot girl.
Yeah, you're good at it. When you have a talent, use it. But if you do want to contact us, you can always find us online at Twitter at The Mixed Reviews.
We're also on Facebook. Just type in The Mixed Reviews.
If you want to write us a little longer form letter, you can always find us at reviewsmixed@gmail.com.
We're also on Instagram at _mix_reviews.
And if you want to listen to our back catalog, just as you've listened to this very excellent episode, you can find us on any major podcast app. We're on Apple, Spotify, Amazon, Audible, Google, though I think Google's shutting down theirs too. You can find us. Just Google us. If you do listen to us on Apple, feel free to stop by, leave us a 5-star rating, write us a little review. We'll read it on the show. And if you want to support us, you can find us on Patreon at patreon.com/themixedreviews.
Yeah, me and Gavin have a little something cooking.
We do.
Something on the back burner. She's coming to the front.
We have a couple things, but Louis just learning about that.
Oh my god! But thank you all so much. We will see you next month. Bye.
Bye.
As well, I whistle a happy tune, and every single time the happiness in the tune convinces me that I'm not afraid. Make believe you're brave, and the trick will take you far. You may be as brave as you make